My family missed the biggest moment of my life. When Aethel, the smart logistics company I founded from scratch, went public, the Forbes headline screamed $92 million valuation, but my phone remained utterly silent. My name is Clara Jensen, 28. The CEO who had conquered a field my family dismissed as digital fluff, received zero congratulatory calls, texts, or emails from the Jensens. Now, 6 months later, as I sat in my minimal high-rise office in New York, overlooking the dizzying lights of the financial district, the silence was broken not by an apology or an expression of pride, but by an order delivered via a terse text from my father, Arthur Jensen, reading, "Family dinner at 7 p.m. at the Lexington Club. Important discussion." Their sudden mandatory summons was nothing more than a blatant transaction. This wasn't a genuine attempt at reconciliation. This was the day of reckoning, a calculation they arrogantly assumed I would participate in, willingly handing over what they felt entitled to. I purposefully drove my aging 7-year-old black sedan to the meeting, the reliable car I bought when I first left home, instead of the gleaming company-issued luxury SUV that sat waiting in the parking garage. I needed them to underestimate my position and my resolve, which would keep them predictable and complacent. Predictable people, especially those blinded by greed, inevitably make careless mistakes. They genuinely believe they summoned me to lay down their discussion points, but they are dangerously mistaken. They don't know I'm arriving fully prepared to deliver the final, irrevocable verdict. They have absolutely no idea that the daughter they systematically banished is now the impartial, unforgiving judge of their fate. Before we dive into my story, tell me, what time are you watching this and in which city, so I know how far my story has traveled. If this story about choosing yourself, taking back control, and finding permanent release resonates with you, please hit subscribe, share your perspective in the comments below, and start documenting the liberation journey of your own life. The cold certainty of that meeting was merely a final, chilling echo of a much older, colder truth, one that was rooted deep in the Jensen family's culture of favoring legacy and male heirs above all else. I vividly remember being 12, feeling intensely small and alone, sitting in my oversized empty room in the vast, ostentatious California house, slowly realizing that my very existence was treated as a perpetual inconvenience. Our family's entire considerable wealth stemmed from the old-school freight and transport business, a world Arthur and my mother, Eleanor Jensen, proudly believed was sacredly and solely reserved for my older brother, Brendan. Brendan, 2 years my senior, was consistently lauded as the golden child, adored unconditionally, and destined for greatness, despite displaying zero initiative or intelligence. His most glaring failures were always immediately dismissed as mere learning experiences, or boys will be boys. Conversely, my small but hard-won academic triumphs were either entirely ignored or simply expected as basic performance. The single most defining and painful instance came with the incident of the antique Ming vase. Brendan carelessly showing off his athletic prowess to his friends during a party knocked over and utterly shattered a priceless heirloom that had sat in the main foyer for decades. The moment Arthur's booming, furious voice filled every corner of the house, Brendan, without a flicker of shame or hesitation, pointed a damning finger directly at me, falsely claiming I was practicing my clumsy ballet moves near the fragile stand and was the sole culprit. No thorough investigation followed. No questions were ever directed toward me. Brendan was instantly, wholeheartedly acquitted. Instead, Arthur furiously grounded me for 2 months straight, and to maximize the public humiliation, forbade me from attending my own middle school graduation ceremony, labeling the punishment a necessary lesson in accountability. Eleanor, my mother, merely stroked Brendan's hair, her eyes soft with maternal bias, and whispered, "Such a good boy, to tell the truth, we must protect him." completely validating his malicious lie and cementing my permanent status as the family pariah. This pattern continued, escalating into cruelty. The worst degradation, a memory that still burns, happened when I was precisely 17. I was battling a debilitating severe fever, my temperature soaring past 103 degrees Celsius, 39.5 degrees Celsius, struggling to breathe under the heavy blankets. That evening, the Jensens were hosting a massive critical client dinner intended as a lavish display of wealth and social standing. Despite my obvious documented illness, Eleanor stormed into my room with a harsh glare, forcefully ripping the blankets off me. She insisted I immediately get up and help serve drinks and hors d'oeuvres, sneering, "Stop faking it. You are not dying. We need every pair of hands available to impress these clients tonight." When I, visibly pale, weak, and trembling violently, finally sank onto a hallway chair, utterly exhausted and unable to stand, she leaned down, her voice dropping to a cruel, chilling whisper that severed our bond forever and delivered the ultimate soul-crushing blow. "You know, out of everyone, you are the most useless thing in this house. You can't handle business, you can't maintain a home, and you certainly can't do anything right. If you're not going to be productive, get out of my sight and stay out of the way." That brutal sentence wasn't just harsh. It was the final explicit declaration of my total worthlessness to them. That very night, fueled by the searing heat of the fever and the freezing pain of her abandonment, I packed a small canvas duffel bag with a few essential clothes, my tattered school books, and $200 in crumpled bills. I silently walked out the back door, slipping past the swimming pool where Brendan and his friends were still laughing loudly and carelessly, and I never once looked back, choosing my own painful survival over their toxic, demanding silence. The distance I covered that night was far more significant than just geographical miles. It was the psychological chasm between their destructive, predetermined definition of my worth and the defiant, self-built reality of my own. I finally landed in Boston, consciously exchanging the sunny, passive-aggressive landscape of California for the harsh, bracing practicality of the Northeast. For the first 2 grueling years, simple survival became my only curriculum. I systematically juggled 3 punishing, non-stop jobs. I worked as a barista during the frantic morning rush, cleaned commercial houses late into the evenings, and meticulously tutored high school math on the weekends, just to afford a small shared mattress on a friend's crowded living room floor. My academic focus was absolute and unforgiving, acting as a crucial shield against the relentless pain and exhaustion. I poured every single ounce of the intense drive they had tried so hard to suppress into my advanced studies, determined to prove Eleanor's vicious pronouncement of useless decisively and publicly wrong. That singular, unwavering focus paid off immensely when I secured a full academic scholarship to the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. When I nervously called Arthur, tentatively sharing the news of my acceptance, hoping against hope for a sliver of genuine pride or recognition, he simply scoffed dismissively. "MIT don't waste valuable time on that digital fluff nonsense, Clara. It won't ever pay the bills like real tangible transport does. We need competent, hands-on managers, not computer geeks playing with algorithms." His immediate cold dismissal was the final piece of the lock I needed to jettison the past completely and focus entirely on the future. My real life-changing fortune came not directly from my academic pursuits, but from a chance encounter during a fiercely competitive university startup competition. I was presenting a nascent, ambitious concept for an AI-driven, completely transparent logistics platform, a world away from Jensen Transport's outdated legacy trucks and processes. That pivotal day, I met Jordan Davis. He was a young, incredibly sharp, and tremendously successful CEO who had recently made a massive exit from his first major tech firm. Unlike the pervasive judgment of my family, Jordan didn't see an unwanted, discarded daughter. He saw ferocious focus, untapped potential, and a relentless capacity for execution. He immediately became my mentor, providing the critical seed funding I desperately needed, and more importantly, lending the unwavering belief that my radical vision was truly revolutionary and viable. We spent the next 4 intense years building Aethel together, specializing in optimizing complex cargo routes and accurately predicting supply chain disruptions using advanced deep learning algorithms. The company scaled with astonishing, unprecedented speed, leveraging proprietary technology. Our massive public breakthrough came swiftly in year 6. Aethel landed the cover of Forbes magazine, recognized as the undisputed game changer in the global logistics sector, with my face prominently featured as the fiercely determined founder, and the company valued at a staggering $92 million. Jordan, who had by this point become far more than just a mentor, a trusted partner, a devoted friend, a person who truly cared for me, celebrated the milestone with genuine, unbridled joy. Yet even as the champagne flowed freely and the world cheered my name, I felt a peculiar, persistent emptiness. It wasn't simple external success I truly craved. It was the ultimate cold ability to rewrite the painful narrative of my own life, to exact a quiet, undeniable price for the 2 decades of profound, painful rejection I had endured. My hard-won success built an impenetrable wall between us, but it was the loud, echoing sound of their impending collapse that finally brought them crawling back, desperate for a foundation I had laid entirely without them. Precisely 12 agonizing months ago, the first hesitant phone call came. It was not predictably the sound of celebration or curiosity, but the desperate, choked-up, unfamiliar voice of Eleanor. Jensen Transport was teetering precariously on the brink of absolute, irreversible ruin. Brendan's arrogant, reckless mismanagement, including willfully ignoring essential technology upgrades, systematically diverting large sums of company funds for his lavish personal projects, and accumulating massive, debilitating regulatory fines for negligence, had fundamentally crippled the entire company. To compound the growing disaster, my younger brother Caleb, who had always been an entitled liability, was facing serious immediate threats over massive unsecured gambling debts that Arthur, in his misguided paternal loyalty, had foolishly guaranteed using company assets. The financial dominoes were falling fast and the foundation was crumbling. Eleanor's frantic plea was direct, manipulative, and purely transactional. "Mummy is literally begging you, Clara. We will lose absolutely everything: the house, the legacy, the very name. You are quite literally the only family member we have left with access to the necessary capital." I didn't respond immediately. I consciously let the heavy silence hang suspended between us, deliberately tasting the bitter, familiar flavor of a lifetime of callous neglect. They had systematically spent 2 decades telling me I was worthless, and now, in their moment of deepest need, they required my built-up worth to save their sinking ship. After a careful, ruthless calculation of the necessary risk, I finally agreed to help, but only under the coldest, most absolute terms imaginable. I would personally guarantee a crucial life-saving bank loan of $3 million, an amount desperately needed, primarily to cover back taxes, settle immediate regulatory fines, and stave off an immediate payroll collapse. This was unequivocally not a gift. It was a strictly temporary, high-stakes investment. The non-negotiable condition, rigorously enforced by comprehensive ironclad legal documentation drafted by my own counsel, was that I would be immediately appointed the interim chairman of the board for 6 months to personally oversee the mandatory and painful restructuring process. More critically, the sophisticated legal instruments used to secure the loan gave me expansive, unprecedented power over all corporate assets, and specifically, the absolute unilateral right to withdraw the entire guarantee with immediate non-negotiable effect if I deemed that the restructuring process or the loan security was in any way violated or threatened. They, having absolutely no other viable recourse, accepted my terms with grudging resentment. Brendan's voice on the subsequent call was thick with venom but completely subdued. Let her play CEO for a while. As long as the money arrives and saves us, what does her title even matter? Overnight, the power dynamic fundamentally shifted. Arthur the patriarch, who once refused to even acknowledge my presence, suddenly started calling me my proud, capable daughter. Eleanor incessantly fluttered around me, offering ridiculous, over-the-top compliments and fake saccharine concern about my health and overworking. Yet every single time I looked deeply into their eyes behind the sickeningly forced smiles and the lavish, undeserved praise, there was absolutely no sign of love, regret, or genuine familial connection. Only the raw, desperate, animalistic hunger of people, looking directly at a temporary automated teller machine, seeing only the vast sums of money I commanded and the power it represented. A temporary truce that is painstakingly built upon massive debt can never endure when the debtors fundamentally and arrogantly misunderstand the basic concept of gratitude or respect. The artificial, superficial sweetness they force-fed me quickly curdled into something far more recognizable, predictable, and deeply toxic. The facade finally shattered on a late, overcast autumn evening, approximately 6 months into my demanding interim chairmanship, after I'd spent a tedious day reviewing highly sensitive legal documents deep within the dilapidated Jensen Transport headquarters. I was retrieving an archival file from Arthur's old dusty private office when I inadvertently brushed a console and accidentally triggered the voice recording function on the executive conference system in the adjacent room. I immediately froze, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm, listening intently to the chilling, calculating voices of Arthur, Eleanor, Brendan, and Caleb, who had joined the private discussion remotely. They were not, to my non-surprise, discussing mandatory restructuring. They were meticulously planning my systematic removal. The core ugly topic was ruthlessly focused on how to pressure me into immediately releasing significantly more capital for Caleb's ever-growing reckless debts, and immediately after securing the funds, how to orchestrate a rapid-fire vote to permanently and completely revoke my chairman status, hypocritically citing my busy schedule, running Aethel as their flimsy excuse. Brendan's voice was the most chilling, dripping with venomous entitlement. She has $92 million sitting there. Tossing us an extra $500,000 for Caleb to clear his miserable name is absolutely nothing to her. She owes us for all the emotional stress she has caused the family over the years by leaving. Arthur's voice then resonated with cold, unwavering conviction, solidifying the horrific reality I was hearing. Her successful company's wealth should naturally benefit the entire family. She owes us a lifetime of obedience. We need to successfully get her to sign over the chairman's rights to Brendan permanently at the dinner this week and secure the cash for Caleb. In that devastating, crystal-clear moment, the final, undeniable, and brutal truth crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. I wasn't, had never been, and would never be their daughter in any meaningful sense. I was simply a lucrative, temporary financial resource. I was the convenient financial safety net, the immediate, painful solution to their long-term incompetence, a creature who had been systematically deemed useless until the very moment I became spectacularly profitable. I was merely and completely the walking wallet expected to quietly deliver her massive earnings back to the family that had ruthlessly discarded her. The sting of betrayal was entirely gone, replaced by an icy, absolute clarity that was both terrifying and liberating. They had, through their actions, unwittingly taught me the ultimate value of ruthless transactional honesty. I silently deactivated the recording, the incriminating files firmly grasped in my hand, my resolve hardening like tempered steel. There was no overwhelming rage, no self-pitying tears, only a deep, cold, calculated resolve. I immediately called Maya Patel, my highly trusted personal counsel, and gave her very precise, very chilling final instructions for the upcoming dinner, making sure she understood with absolute certainty that every single paper she meticulously prepared was meant not for any further negotiation, but for swift, decisive execution. With the calculated truth solidifying in every facet of my mind, the drive to the exclusive Lexington Club became the definitive final journey to a destination of absolute control that I had meticulously planned for over 6 months. The Lexington Club stood as the epitome of old money wealth and suffocating ingrained exclusivity, a place the Jensens habitually frequented to reinforce their fading social standing and project an illusion of unwavering financial stability. I pulled my modest 7-year-old black sedan up to the valet stand, purposefully parking it myself beside Arthur's gleaming, ridiculously expensive and ostentatious SUV, a deliberate, visual contrast. Inside the meticulously decorated private dining room, the atmosphere was suffocatingly formal, oppressively fake, and heavy with unspoken expectation. Eleanor was the first to rush forward and greet me, her face contorted into a mask of artificial fragile warmth, her hand quickly touching my arm with a physical closeness that had never once been offered for comfort or affection during my childhood. "Clara, you look far too thin, darling. You simply must be working too hard. We worry so much about your well-being." She managed to sickly purr, attempting a shallow, calculated, emotional plea. I offered her a small, non-committal, equally fake smile, not allowing any genuine emotion to register in my eyes. Arthur sat stiffly and regally at the imposing head of the lengthy table flanked by Brendan, whose expensive tailor-made suit could not, however, conceal the simmering tension and barely contained entitlement radiating from his entire body. I immediately noticed Scott Miller, the company's unsuspecting chief financial officer, sitting discreetly in the corner, an impartial observer the family often utilized to artificially project a misleading image of legitimacy and professionalism to any outsider. After a painful few minutes of utterly unbearable small talk, where they ignored the exquisite untouched food, the pleasantries were abruptly and quickly dropped. Brendan, true to his arrogant form, was the first and most aggressive to strike, completely bypassing any final pretense of family affection or civility. His voice was thickly laced with raw entitlement, not a hint of gratitude for the enormous bailout. "Look, Clara." He began, pushing a thin folder across the polished mahogany table. "Aethel is clearly demanding far too much of your focus and time. This restructuring requires total consistency and a dedicated hand. We need you to immediately sign these papers transferring the chairman position to Dad permanently and officially naming me as the next CEO." Arthur quickly chimed in, his voice taking on the false manufactured gravity of a disappointed patriarch. "It's about commitment, daughter," he insisted, leaning forward with aggressive intensity. "The family business requires full stability now, not temporary measures, and Caleb desperately needs a small liquidity injection, $500,000, to completely clear up some unfortunate debts he's accumulated. It's time, Clara, that you committed fully and finally to the family that raised you and made you who you are." They were presenting the brazen, cold terms of their planned financial robbery. They demanded my hard-earned power and a substantial portion of my money, all framed maliciously as a non-negotiable duty I fundamentally owed them. Their demands, spoken carelessly in that luxurious velvet-lined room, were the bitter, calculated crescendo of 20 years of relentless emotional debt collection. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water, allowing the full weight of their self-serving demands to settle into the silence, preparing to deliver my own devastating counteroffer. The hollow, demanding sound of their voices had permanently lost its manipulative power years ago. Now, in this final confrontation, they were merely unwitting props in a perfectly orchestrated scene that I was finally about to execute and direct. I placed my glass down on the table, the soft, deliberate click echoing loudly in the oppressive, tense silence of the room. I gently but firmly pushed their flimsy transfer document back across the polished mahogany. I appreciate your deep, sudden concern for the company's stability, Brendan, I stated calmly, my eyes locked on his flaring nostrils. But before I commit fully, I think it's only fair that we discuss my commitment to your actual recorded intentions. I fixed my gaze sequentially on Arthur, then Eleanor, ensuring they felt my focus. I had the distinct displeasure of hearing your private little meeting, the one where you meticulously planned a coup to immediately remove me as chairman and discussed exactly how I owe the family my hard-earned wealth while repeatedly calling me useless until I became extremely profitable. Brendan's jaw dropped so dramatically that I could practically hear the click of his teeth. Arthur's face instantly went a sickly white, the blood draining completely away. Eleanor stammered pathetically, desperately trying to interject. "Clara, darling, that's a profound, terrible misunderstanding." Before she could finish the weak, transparent denial, the door to the private room opened with perfect timing, and Maya Patel, my sharp, utterly stone-faced personal counsel, walked in with a controlled, deliberate pace, placing a thick, ominous, red-tabbed folder squarely onto the table directly in front of Arthur. "I am absolutely not signing your papers," I stated with finality, my voice remaining low, measured, and utterly devoid of any detectable emotion or lingering warmth. "Instead, I will be signing mine, which Maya has so kindly prepared." I gave a slight, imperceptible nod to Maya. "The first order of business due to your egregious documented violation of the oversight clause in the guarantee agreement, specifically your documented plan for a coup to remove me and your unauthorized demanding of additional funds for Caleb, I am hereby declaring the original loan contract null and void." Maya then spoke, her voice clear, precise, and authoritative, cutting through the stunned silence. "Ms. Jensen is formally submitting the official notice of revocation of the $3 million loan guarantee, effective immediately and non-negotiable." The air in the expensive room instantly turned cold and dangerously charged. Arthur bolted upright from his seat, the heavy wooden chair falling backward with a loud, sickening crash. "You absolutely cannot do that. The bank will call in the entire loan immediately. You will destroy us." Brendan was already screaming incoherently, his voice reaching a high-pitched panic. I remained perfectly still, leaning back calmly in my chair, watching the chaos unfold. That, father, is precisely the fundamental point. And since the comprehensive collateral I legally required for that guarantee included the official legal title to all major operational assets of Jensen Transport, as well as, yes, the deed to the luxurious home you currently reside in, I am also concurrently activating the emergency fund withdrawal clause. Maya added the final, devastating, and entirely unexpected legal sentence, driving the final nail into the coffin. "All remaining available company capital has been transferred into a holding account under Aethel's direct control to permanently mitigate Ms. Jensen's personal risk. Consequently, Jensen Transport's assets, including the real estate, are now officially seized by Ms. Jensen's entity as guaranteed collateral repayment." Arthur's eyes were wild, bulging with a potent, visceral hatred that was disturbingly familiar and instantly recognizable from my painful childhood. He violently slammed his fist onto the table, rattling the silverware and crystal. "You are not my daughter. You are only a cold, calculating monster who would destroy her own blood." I met his naked fury with a tranquil, accepting gaze, calmly embracing the title he assigned me. "That is correct, father." I confirmed, my gaze steady. "I am exactly the monster you spent 2 decades meticulously creating." Stepping out of the suffocating opulence of the Lexington Club and into the cool, liberating evening air, the only sound I truly heard was the distinct final and absolute breaking of the heavy chains I didn't fully realize I was still wearing. Maya and I calmly drove away, leaving behind the profound cacophony of shattered entitlement, the sounds of Eleanor's desperate high-pitched weeping, Arthur's enraged, incoherent shouting, and Brendan violently screaming over the phone at Caleb, blaming him for the entire debacle. The consequences of my calculated action were swift, absolute, and undeniably permanent. Within one short month, precisely as the bank immediately demanded full repayment of the loan, the entire Jensen Transport empire, a company stubbornly built entirely on old money, outdated practices, and my family's false pride officially filed for devastating bankruptcy. Arthur and Brendan were left facing not just total financial ruin, but massive personal lawsuits from furious creditors and unforgiving regulatory bodies. They systematically lost everything they had valued: the failing business, the social prestige, and the luxurious, sprawling house that I had just legally taken as collateral. Eleanor made one final tearful, highly manipulative phone call to my private line, professing how she desperately missed her little girl and conveniently needing my immediate help for her sudden, non-existent, stress-induced heart condition. I listened to her transparent, practiced performance for exactly 5 seconds. 5 seconds of pure, undiluted, and predictable manipulation. And then, with the deepest sense of peace I had ever known, I pressed the block contact button, completely deleting the connection and the toxicity permanently from my life. It was without question the single most liberating, empowering action of my entire life. The feeling that washed over me wasn't fleeting, hollow triumph or cheap revenge. It was a quiet, profound, and utterly secure release. I subsequently bought an elegant, spacious penthouse in Manhattan, not to show off or compete, but purely because for the first time I finally felt completely and structurally safe. I took a 6-month sabbatical from Aethel, traveling extensively to the serene, distant shores of Bali, where I spent uninterrupted time with Jordan Davis, the man who had always genuinely seen my light, my mind, and my potential, never once reducing me to my wallet. Jordan, who would eventually become my devoted life partner, and later my husband, helped me systematically process and heal from the lingering, painful, emotional scars of my childhood. His unwavering, non-judgmental belief in my inherent worth was the true, gentle cure for the deep poison of my past. He consistently reminded me with quiet conviction, "Clara, the greatest and most crucial courage in life is ultimately choosing yourself." The complex story of the walking wallet ends not with the bitterness of revenge, but with the profound, absolute liberation of self-acceptance and agency. If you've ever found yourself in the agonizing position of having to choose yourself over people who only know how to systematically take use and discard, understand this truth: you are not being selfish. You are merely exercising your fundamental, non-negotiable right to survive and thrive. True love and genuine familial connection are not measured by the accident of blood ties. They are measured exclusively by how present, honest, and truly supportive people are for you when you need emotional support, not cold, hard capital. Never under any circumstances allow anyone to systematically reduce you or turn you into their walking wallet. This is the painful but empowering lesson I learned the hardest way possible, and it set me free. I deeply thank you for listening to this intensely personal story until the very end. I genuinely hope it provides you with strength, clarity, and the courage to make your own liberating choice. Please comment below with your honest thoughts on my final decision. Do you see it as necessary justice or simply a survival imperative? Hit subscribe to ensure you don't miss the next happier chapter of my life and the stories that follow.